broadcast back in 1991, but debate around the subject continues as fiercely as ever: the medical use of marijuana. Some doctors and many patients believe that for certain conditions it can be the difference between life and death. But the U.S. government, which for years ran a small program of prescribed marijuana, believes otherwise. When the story was broadcast, there were 14 people getting marijuana legally. Now there are 8, and when they die, no more prescriptions will be filled. Herewith, Smoking to Live. What you are watching is quite rare. This man and his wife are smoking marijuana, legal marijuana. They were among only a handful of people in the United States who had it prescribed by their doctors. For Ken and Barbara Janks, marijuana was but one more of the myriad of prescription drugs they took every day. How often do you smoke these?
We usually smoke, I usually smoke at least 3 to 4 a day.
What would happen to you physically, both of you, if you went for a couple of days without these?
You throw up all the time.
I would get sick to my stomach.
I mean, you get sick.
I wouldn't be able to
take
eat.
Your medicine, and then you can't eat. So, I mean, the weight, and then you start losing weight. So, I mean,
having AIDS is like a wasting syndrome. With the virus and everything. The smell of food, just even thinking about food just makes you nauseated.
Ken and Barbara Janks are dying. He is a hemophiliac. 11 years ago, he was given blood contaminated by the AIDS virus. He unknowingly infected his wife. They are both too sick to work. They live on disability, barely able to cope. Without the marijuana, they would probably be dead, would have wasted away because of the nausea brought on by their chemotherapy. Before they got marijuana legally, they bought it on the street or grew it, until last year when police burst into their trailer in Panama City, Florida, and got the goods on them. 2 marijuana plants.
and then they started, going through my house. I mean, just dumping drawers and tearing the cabinets up.
The police thought they were onto something big when they found a suitcase filled with syringes and other drug paraphernalia.
And they were going berserk.
Ken tried to convince them that the syringes and the pills were prescribed by doctors. He did not tell them that marijuana was the only medicine that enabled them to take the chemotherapy without being violently ill.
You're talking to somebody that never wanted to take an aspirin for a headache. It's a relief to know that there's something that you can smoke to relieve the nausea from taking all the medications that you're on.
The Janks were charged with growing marijuana and possession of drug paraphernalia. In court, their lawyer, John Daniel, tried to prove that for the Janks, marijuana was a medical necessity. Did the prosecution present any counter evidence?
None whatsoever, sir. In fact, they even stipulated in Kenny and Barbara's case that it was beneficial for them and that they would die without it.
The prosecution conceded that?
Yes, sir.
But you lost the case because you couldn't prove medical necessities. That doesn't jive somehow.
Judge Foster said there is no such doctrine as medical necessity in Florida, that it's a matter for the legislature to promulgate a statute that says that it is or is not.
But the judge was not an unsympathetic judge.
Super judge. The sweetest sentence I've had in 20 years of criminal defense work.
The judge found them guilty, but sentenced them to 500 hours of community service, their only task to look after each other. As decent as the sentence was, the Janks were outraged that they were still considered criminals. They decided to appeal.
Kenny and Barbara said, go for it. We're going to be gone soon. There's going to be people following in our footprints and in our pain and suffering, and there needs to be some law made one way or the other on it. That's why they took it up on appeal, and I'm glad to do it for them.
Why? They're not exactly the wealthiest clients in the world.
I'm not exactly charging them, sir.
The DEA classifies marijuana as a highly dangerous drug in the same class as heroin and LSD. And the only way to get it legally is to face a bureaucratic jungle, 3 of them. Applications have to go through the DEA, the FDA, and the National Institute of Drug Abuse, and if all approved, the legal marijuana grown on a government farm in Mississippi is sent to the patient's pharmacist, a month's supply of cigarettes at a time. It took the janks almost 9 months to get their first prescription. Many doctors are reluctant to make the effort, fearing that the ramifications of even applying for marijuana will affect their reputations. The janks' own doctor, who prescribes marijuana for them, won't come on and talk about it.
A junkie doctor. He doesn't want to be called that. I understand that. It could also be, I'm afraid I'll have all of these people coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, I got a back pain. Doctor, how about giving me 400 joints? I can understand that.
But many doctors say their reluctance to apply for a prescription has nothing to do with bureaucracy. Dr. Richard Gralla, who heads the Department of Oncology at the Ochsner Clinic in New Orleans, told us that the scientific studies do not show marijuana as effective as other drugs, despite the claims of Randall and other patients.
There are testimonials for almost any medicine. And in fact, sometimes testimonials are the germ of a good idea, the beginning of a good idea. Unfortunately, more often than not, they're just that. They're just testimonials.
But Dr. Lester Grinspoon, who practices psychiatry at Harvard University, disagrees. He's one of the first physicians to take a stand on using marijuana as medical treatment.
It is very useful for the treatment of the nausea and vomiting, which accompanies the use of some chemotherapeutic substances for the treatment of some cancers.
Dr. Grinspoon knows it from the most personal kind of experience. His son had leukemia and died, but during the chemotherapy, Grinspoon feels it was the marijuana that was keeping young Danny alive.
He would be so tense before he took the medicine because he knew what was going to follow, and what followed was 8 hours of first vomiting and then retching. It's very, very difficult. He got to the point where he said, I'm not going to take the medicine anymore.
How old was he?
He was 15.
His wife bought some marijuana near a local high school. At Danny's next treatment, Grinspoon was amazed.
It was absolutely stunning, the difference that this made. He was relaxed. He had the treatment. He not only did not have nausea and vomiting, but he asked if he could get a submarine sandwich on the way home. I was really dumbfounded. I then called the doctor, Dr. Jaffe, who was taking care of him, and told him what had happened. And so the next time, he smoked cannabis right in the treatment room at the Children's Hospital. Same thing, not a bit of discomfort, ate afterwards. And it was then that Dr. Jaffe and I went to the head of the Children's Hospital, Dr. Fry, and suggested that maybe this bore some kind of systematic looking into. And that, in fact, led to the Salin study, which first established that this is that useful in the treatment of the nausea and vomiting of cancer chemotherapy.
But the DEA has maintained for years that marijuana has no therapeutic value, that it's a dangerous drug that must remain illegal. However, no one from the DEA would come on this broadcast and respond to the scientific evidence of those who say otherwise. 3 years ago, the DEA's administrative law judge, Francis Young, wrote of marijuana, in light of the evidence, it would be unreasonable, arbitrary, and capricious for the DEA to stand between those sufferers and the benefits of this substance. But the DEA rejected its own judge's opinion and stands firm that doctors shall not prescribe marijuana. Except, of course, for those few who are willing to go through the agonizingly long process of applying. Desperate patients say they would rather live by buying marijuana illegally than die by playing by the rules. Dr. Ivan Silverberg hears that all the time from his cancer patients in San Francisco.
I have yet to hear of a patient who can't find it. I have heard loud and clear from patients who resent having to go on the street when they're feeling sick, when they're nauseated, when they've lost 40 and 50, 60 pounds, to try and buy a drug from somebody without knowing whether that drug is adulterated because it comes off the street, of having to face the possibility the person they're buying from it is an undercover policeman. I think all of these things are wrong.
But Silverberg says if he had to fill out that mountain of paperwork every time a patient needed marijuana, he wouldn't have time to treat his patients.
Why has the DEA dug its heels in on this and will not allow the general prescribing of marijuana by physicians when you can prescribe much more dangerous, much more habit-forming drugs?
You're absolutely correct. I think morphine, for example, Demerol are far more hazardous drugs, in my opinion, than marijuana. I think part of it is an entrenched bureaucracy that doesn't want to admit it's wrong.
Even if it were available in 10 minutes down in the pharmacy, I'd be reluctant to write it. It has nothing to do with the political issues that we have in drugs and the drug problem in the United States. It's the fact that in my own experience in using cannabinoids, in my patients' experience who have smoked marijuana, neither marijuana nor the cannabinoids measure up to those drugs that I have.
If marijuana is as effective as Drs. Silverberg and Grinspoon say it is, why haven't the drug companies tried to get government approval for it?
You can't patent marijuana. It's a plant. They can't make any money. No way. You see, in our country, the way drugs come into being, a drug company gets hold of a chemical. Somebody discovered it has some sort of effect. They review it. They decide, is it worth trying to do it? They have to invest between $80 and $100 million to get it from chemical to drug on the shelf. But then they get an exclusive patent for 17 years, and they can earn a lot of money. How could they possibly do this with cannabis?
For the Janks, marijuana has made their troubled lives tolerable. And to the doubters, they say,
Do I look like a junkie?
Do I? I mean,
I wish I didn't have to take the medication that I wish I didn't even have to smoke marijuana.
it'd be nice to be free of drugs and disease, but we're not. I mean, we need drugs. I can't help that. I mean, I've been taking drugs my whole life, and it hasn't made a junkie out of me.
do you ever agonize over why me, why us?
At first.
At first we did.
But then, I mean, for me, it was easier. I mean, I've been dealing with disease since I was 6 months old, so it was just like fuel to the fire. I mean, you know, it was just one more thing.
He blamed himself because I had gotten it. And I don't blame him because I love him. He's my husband.
You know, these are the cards you got dealt. You just got to play them or fold, kind of.
Barbara Janks died in 1992, her husband a year later. As we said, there are now only 8 patients receiving marijuana, and no further prescriptions will be filled by the federal government. While 25 states have laws allowing medical use of marijuana, the federal government maintains marijuana is not a legitimate drug, which in effect makes those states' laws meaningless.
Carlos, ¿dónde vas? Carlos, ¿dónde vas?
To the movies?
You haven't had breakfast. Sit down.
I'm not hungry.
Sit down. You have to have breakfast first.
It'll make you feel good. 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 No, 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 no.
Yo, Carlos, you got some pasito? Yeah, I got some Newz, man. It's a good blow, man. Let me just try something. I got some ups, some real nice ups.
No, man.
Talk to your kids about offers of drugs. Help your children to just say no.
Let's get the weed and just smoke a little lie. All my people in the place, get high tonight. Yeah, let's get it. Get high tonight. Come on, for all the people, just buy a nickel bag. Roll up the weed and just smoke a little lie. Put your hands together, get high tonight. Everybody join together, get high tonight. Come on now, happy together. Buy a nickel bag. Come on, Tom, yeah. Smoke a little lie. Put it all together, get high tonight. Throw your hands up high, get high tonight. Feel good, baby. Buy a nickel bag. Put it all together, smoke a little lie. Get high, baby. Get high tonight. Throw your hands up high and get high tonight. Talk to me, my shot. Before I set it off and show what I'm gonna do to ya. Possess the bone chocolates from Offland and Utica. My real live niggas in the place who don't quit. Wave your spliff high, son. That's right. Fuck the bullshit. Look, your arms are open, my palms release the bomb. Bring the alarm. My word is my bond. Scream on niggas through the intercom. Up to date, let's roll the skate. Yo, my whole squad smoking ain't straight unless we smoking at a high rate. I always produce the potion. Weed smoking got me moving slow motion like we floating on relax ocean. All my peeps who feel high, don't want your darkest shades and too much smoke up in your eye. No, keep it swinging, listen to all of my bells ringing. My get high has niggas wanting to start singing. I said this goes out to those who smoke out the fall, and all my bitches in the place who only on draw. So just high and go back, smoke a little loud, get high tonight, get high tonight, high and go back, smoke a little loud, get high tonight, get high tonight. Yo, bounce back, you just caught the contact. African black, overreact, charge. I'm about to bench the whole whack, must interact on every track, blow the spot down. Niggas break full and smoke across the world. Almanac. My sons who don't smoke and get high, drinking cognac, Hennessy, Cristal, Moet. What's going on with that? What the deal done? Sometimes I sip Jamaican white rum, chase with a little milk. I know y'all niggas want some. Represent where you from, needing some Tic Tacs and gum. So when nigga breath don't hum. Get high, then I get fly when I be shopping at the atrium, smoking the center of Yankee Stadium. Stand strong, yes we rock on and on. The flip phone stamps, all of my songs, they get the place them niggas must perform. I smoke till your brain fry so high you can't open your eye. My niggas need to just high and go back, smoke a little loud, get high tonight, get high tonight.